you have the stage.
Okay, this is actually my first time presenting in Google Meet, so can you hear me? All good? Okay. Okay, I'm going to present. Okay, can you guys see that? I should have the simulator up, yeah. Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for saying the nice things about Clearful, Sid, and for inviting me to do this. I've been to a few of these meetups, but I don't think I've ever spoke, so this is number one. So Clearful for too small, something too small.
What's up, Jeffrey?
No, I just saw a comment. I just thought the screen was too small or something.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Go ahead. I think.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore the comments for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the text size. Maybe you can increase the text size. I think if you're using Mac, it's Command plus.
Yeah, not much to see there, but I will show some other things.
Introduce yourself, and then so that people know, who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Jeff. So Clearful is a journaling app. And as to why journaling, so my wife and I, who is also my partner in this app, with another partner, we previously built an app called Mealime, which, by the way, is probably the most horrible name ever. So tip, don't choose a bad name for your app. So that's a mistake we will make sure not to repeat. Anyway, Mealime ended up pretty successful and is still one of the top meal planning apps in the App Store and Google Play. So a couple of years ago, that app was acquired, and at the time, I was not technical. Our third partner was the technical co-founder, so he built it all. So I guess there were a lot of issues on my side in a tech business, not understanding the tech. So after we sold, I took the opportunity to learn how to code. And that's what I've been doing the last couple of years. And I was pretty excited to find Flutter because it's been pretty awesome. And while I was at Mealime, I found journaling super helpful just because building a company is really stressful. And once I could figure out how to code a little bit and put something together, we started looking for business ideas. And generally, as the story goes, we couldn't find a journaling app that we actually liked. And we thought there was opportunity in the space. So that's how Clearful came about. And yeah, so I guess I'll just give a little quick demo and feel free to jump in with questions. So here is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying awesome, I actually looked up Mealime, and it's a pretty cool app too.
Except the name. I can't get over the name.
Pretty cool. I think it's a pretty thought out name.
Well, it was a play on mealtime, but people would call it Mealime or Me-a-lime or just mealtime. They never got the correct name, so it was really bad.
I got the name right.
First time you're the first one, Sid.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is the main view of Clearful. It actually used to be called Home, and we changed it to Today because kind of it's everything that relates to today. So here we have, I'll just go through everything here. We have just kind of a mini stats section. And I've actually found the streaks really helpful to me. But we didn't just want to do a daily streak. Like a lot of apps, daily streaks are great. And I actually have like a 900-day Duolingo streak. And the only thing that's keeping me going is the fact that there is a streak. So it's definitely helpful, but I don't think journaling is necessarily something you want to do on a daily basis. So for that reason, we also have a weekly streak. So you don't have to worry about doing it every day. So that's a little thing I like about the app. So what you can do, write today's entry, and pretty basic so far, but you can just write an entry here and go as long as you like. So once I save it, it's here already. And the nice thing is all of the entries, at least right now, we're going to have to stop this because people have too many entries, but it's all a stream. So it's updated immediately. And yeah, I don't have to worry about fetching again and again and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you use Firebase in the backend, right? So when you update the entry, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that's been really nice, just the integration and not having to worry about things. I'm not sure if that will come back to bite us later because the nature of our app is probably a lot of entries. So we'll see how the expenses turn out later, but so far so good. So here is the Discover Daily. It's just a daily question. Kind of the difference between our journaling app and a lot of the other ones is we want to help guide you because looking at a blank page is, I don't know, I just can't do it. Sometimes I can write something, but usually it's just pretty shallow. So having prompts, and you'll see a lot more in the library there, is something that really helps me personally. So this changes every day, and then we can just, you know, answer it like that. And then again, because we're using Firestore, everything is streamed here, super fast updating. And then when you click it there, it'll just open the same entry instead of doing a new one. And then we have Rediscover next, which is actually my favorite feature. So it's kind of similar to in Photos on this day, that kind of thing. So we're bringing up old entries from various time periods ago. So we have like a week ago, a month ago, 3 months, 6 months, and then every year. So at the beginning, it won't be too valuable for people, but once they start adding entries, it it'll bring it back and kind of surprise you. So when we built Clearful, I had journals from Evernote and Day One and a few others. So I had journals all over the place. So I managed to import them all. So I have like 6 years of journals in here now, and it's kind of crazy looking at the old stuff that pops up. Sometimes it's super embarrassing, but it's still nice to look at. So yeah, you can see from a month ago, in this case, a year ago, and these are just dummy entries I wrote here. So that's the today view. I'll come back to this button up here. In the last demo, Calvin talked about feedback, and we also have a feedback modal everywhere and found it really helpful. So I'll just demo that a little bit later, but we have that on every screen. So the entries view here is just super basic. It's just a list right now. I'm actually in the process of adding geolocation. So that allows us to do map views and that kind of thing, or a timeline view. But for right now, it's quite simple. So you can just open an entry, close it. You can look at the entry details here. And the location is right there. I just have it commented out right now because it's not finished.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious why you think location was an important feature. Just because it's sensitive information, right? So
yeah.
So I'm kind of curious about why you thought adding location would be cool.
Yeah, it's a good question whether it's important or not. I guess one part of the answer is there are some features that people who use journaling apps kind of want and come to expect. So reaching feature parity with other apps while still remaining different. So a lot of them do location, and we have actually had a lot of feedback about it. Personally, I just didn't think it would be too interesting, but just demoing it around town, it's actually kind of cool to see, where you did it, and especially if you're doing it in different countries or cities or provinces, that kind of thing. Yeah. I think it could be interesting because you look back on an old entry and sometimes I'll just start writing like, we did this, and I'm like, well, where the hell was I? Like, I don't know what this even means.
Yeah,
So
I
it
can
could be
I can
cool.
see that. Yeah, especially when you talked about like different countries or when you're traveling, you can just maybe filter by, oh yeah, I went to like Germany and I want to see what went on over there. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good reason to add location.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
It's
never
been
think of that.
it's been way more complicated than I thought. So I kind of wish I hadn't started it, but it's almost done now. So so it'll be okay. So the library here is probably the most important part of the app, as it kind of fits into our main thesis, I guess, that people understand the value of journaling and often want to do it, but it's just really hard to look at a blank page. So we've developed a lot of content to help, and we plan to add a lot more. And it seems we're kind of almost building the same app again, because kind of the core differentiator of Mealime, our last app, was all the recipes were ours. We didn't scrape any websites or anything. We actually developed them. And that just gave us the ability to, limit food waste and control the ingredients used and all that stuff. So we seem to be doing a content kind of play again, which is definitely good and bad. So we have quite a lot of things. We've got a lot of things here in the library. So here, this is just a Flutter page view of collections that we've created. Apparently that's taking a while to load. Actually, if you go in landscape mode, it switches to a list view. I was pretty psyched when I made that work. But anyway, these are just collections that we have curated with some of our own templates and prompts. So a prompt is basically just a really short question. If you don't want to answer anything too serious, you can just do one of these. I do them quite often. Whereas a template is just a much longer, almost collection of prompts, but they are quite different. And that's if you're, ready to sit down and do a longer entry. You can just click and it will bring it up and use it. And you can actually access this from the entry itself, and it will kind of shoot you back and replace your entry with a template or a prompt. So we'll just exit out of there. I'll go back. And then we also have topics, which are kind of the same thing as collections. They're just organized by topic. So we have a whole bunch of different categories here, and we're adding prompts and templates to those all the time. And the thing I've been working on quite recently, and which is kind of getting us ready to launch our subscription plan, hopefully in the next month. It's been pushed back a couple months, but is user collections, where you can add your own with your own image and icon and that kind of thing. So this is just a demo of that. And yeah, the difference is it can just be your own, basically just folders for prompts and templates and courses, whatever else we come up with later. So that's pretty exciting. And you can see them all here, yours.
Do you use any sort of maybe AI or maybe just simple if-else conditions to show the ones that the user might be interested more?
We don't have any smart stuff at all going on yet.
Yeah. But you
definitely
plan on
want to
that
soon. Yeah. So search here. Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
I was just going to say, I like how you have that all laid out and use the images. It reminds me of how the Calm app uses this great secondary imagery and just gives you 100 different ways to be inspired to actually do the thing.
Yeah.
It's really great how you've done that. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. Part of the issue is, I guess people are lazy, myself included. I almost never even open the library tab myself, even though I made the app. So part of the problem is throwing some of this in the today tab. And actually in a new entry, we've been doing some testing where you can bring up, it's a bit slow in debug mode, but you can bring up kind of short lists of this kind of content to get people to, try to use it without having to go to the library, having to search for it. So we're doing a lot of little experiments like this to try to make it not overbearing, but much easier to just open it and start writing. So search here is something I built quite recently, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. As I'm using Firestore, and for those of you who are using it, you can't really do any interesting queries. Despite there being Google, they don't even offer a search service. They say go use Algolia or Elasticsearch. And I found a different one called Mealy Search, which is actually pretty awesome. We're just hosting it ourselves in DigitalOcean. And the reason I didn't go with Algolia is because just the nature of our app, with people eventually adding entries and their own prompts, templates that are searchable, it could just get way too expensive. So it's been pretty good, and it's really quick, and it's fuzzy, so it will find things even with spelling mistakes. So I've been pretty happy with it. I can link to that. It's just called Mealy Search, but it's pretty new, and yeah, it's been great. So I just released this last week, so I'm not quite sure what people are searching for yet, but I've personally found it useful so far, and we've threw the topics in here too, just for extra browsing capabilities. And then you can just scroll right through them. But we've had a lot of feedback that people don't like to scroll, so that's why we're trying to get search up there and collections, and make it easier. And I understand, because I personally never scroll here again, even though it's my app. So pretty funny.
Yeah, I kind of remember. So do you think it would be useful to show a scroll bar just to let the users know, okay, hey, this page is scrollable. There's content. If you go down, if you keep scrolling, things like that.
Yeah. Yes. I actually forget why it's not there. I think when we made the switch to slivers, I had a lot of issues. Maybe that was the issue where it wasn't compatible. Maybe it is now. I haven't looked at it. If anybody knows, let me know. Or I could just look it up. But yeah, that's a good idea, Sid.
I have a question about data privacy. And did you have to work with lawyers to do a privacy policy and all that? And how do you handle that?
Great question.
Yeah, so right now we are using Ayubenda. It basically just you put all the services that you are using, and they have kind of stock stuff, and it's a hosted privacy page. We will probably go the lawyer route. We did for the last app, and I guess shore things up a little bit. We are encrypting everybody's entries. So right now we hold the key, so it's not fully end-to-end, but when I'm in Firestore, I can't see their entries. So that's kind of the first layer. And we're actually working with a company right now to implement full end-to-end encryption. So the most important data will definitely, we won't be able to look at it even if we wanted to, which we definitely don't. But for the rest of the privacy stuff, we have Ayubenda and probably need to improve it a little bit.
Yeah. And so how does search work with encrypted data?
Right. So that is a serious issue. And that's why you didn't see search in the entries view, because I don't know how to do it yet. So the prompts and templates, the content that we've created is not encrypted because there's no need for it to be. So that's how we're doing search. Searching on encrypted data it's kind of a problem. I'm just punting to the future because it sounds very complicated.
For sure.
Are you available in have you not released this in the UK or Europe, or are you everywhere?
So right now we're in, I think, 6 countries, basically just US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. Very basic, very small launch. We will be opening up to Europe, I think, next week.
Because that would be because Europe, the reason why I haven't released yet in Europe is because of the GDPR compliance. Have you looked at that at all?
Well, which part of it? Because there's a lot of pieces.
Like, I think the biggest thing for me is
just
some kind of
we've got 10 more minutes for the demo.
Sorry.
Oh,
You go ahead.
okay.
I don't know. I mean, you can prioritize either the questions or you can keep going with the demo. Anything works. And we can also come back later on. So once we go through like all the talks.
Cool. Well, I'll just keep going really quickly, and then maybe we can get to the questions. Settings, pretty basic. We've done the theming thing, although we want to add a lot more themes in the future. And I'm actually having trouble finding how to do system versions of custom themes. You know, so like 6 different themes, but each of them have their own dark theme instead of just a standard dark theme. Trying to figure that out. We have Face ID and Touch ID. When you close the app and open it again, it will kind of lock you out. And I'm also implementing an entry-level lock for like super sensitive entries. That will be like a full authentication to open it. I know, oh yeah, there's a couple other points. So yeah, feedback modal. Just like Cal was talking about, yeah, we found it super useful. This just goes to a feedback collection we have in Firestore, and we batch them once a week and just reply to people. Yeah, it's been really great. Feedback is good, even if sometimes it's wrong. And another thing I made a note of what Cal said was guest or anonymous accounts. So in Mealime, our last app, we learned, because originally we did email password, and we did an experiment where we took away the password, and that really jacked up signup rates. So from the start, we went anonymous by default. So there's just a big button on the welcome view, and that will throw you in the app, and then you can link it with email password, Google, Apple. So that's been great. We have a pretty high welcome view to getting in the app rate. And I know everybody loves talking about state management. So quick overview, I started out just using vanilla provider and it worked fine. I've since been using the stacked package, which is basically just a wrapper around provider and change notifier. And it's a variant on the model view model architecture. So I have just, where is it? So is that big enough? You guys see okay?
Maybe maybe twice, like you can increase the font 2 times more.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge. Okay. So this is kind of just the pattern. You return this builder or this widget at the top of the build function. It has a few nice things. So when it's mounted, I can call a function. It gives me nice busy functionality, and it allows you to catch errors pretty nicely. This is the corresponding view model. So you can see in a init here, I can just set it busy to really true. And it's super basic. It just calls notify listeners on a busy object here. But it's been decent so far. I'm pretty reasonably happy with it. There are definitely things I don't like. And it gets worse because I use Gedit, and the developer of Gedit just released Gedit Mixin, which is adding state management to Gedit for the service locator. And as I already use it, I'm now experimenting with that too. So this is a widget where I'm using the Gedit Mixin. And it kind of looks like just the provider syntax for watching an object. So I'm kind of playing with that a little bit. State management is all over the place, and we'll just see where it kind of comes out. So I don't have a place where I'm too happy with it.
Yeah, and so one question was how have you found the text editing experience? I remember we had the conversation on the general chat.
Not generally great. Yeah, I wish I had researched it before doing a text-heavy Flutter app because it's been really tough. I spent a couple months ago, devising this block notion-y thing that I'm not clearly good enough to actually do. So I scrapped it. But I think I shared a package recently called Super Editor that's being developed. And I actually bought an hour of consulting time with the lead developer on another issue, and he told me about it. So I'm pretty excited about that. Once they add mobile functionality, it looks like it should be able to handle what we're doing. But text editing, yeah, it hasn't been great. Yeah, not too happy with it. Yeah. So that's kind of it. I know Sid had asked about design, and we don't really have a methodology, except we think it's important and we think about it a lot, and we think it matters for brand and retention and that kind of thing. But that said, we found refactoring UI really helpful. It's by the Tailwind CSS guys. It's just like a PDF you can buy, but we found it really useful for building UIs quickly where it doesn't look terrible. Although my wife's a pretty good designer, so yes, Tyler. The company's called Cossack Labs, COSSACK, and they actually worked with Bear, the Notes app, to do their end-to-end encryption and a few others. So we're getting them to design a custom system for us. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to implementing it. There was a question about responsive design. Yeah, so I've created a few responsive widgets. So I have a responsive padding that I pad on every page, basically. Let me see if I can find it. Where would it be? I do have some responsive stuff there. Yeah, it's not quite. I can send a code sample, but I am using a package, and I kind of forget which one, but it just makes doing media queries easier, and it has defaults for mobile, tablet, watch, and desktop. And based on which one, I just increase the percentage base padding on each side of the screen. And it's worked pretty well so far, because we did work on iPad a couple months ago, and we had to do all this for that. Yeah, so yeah, I can just send a code sample or figure out exactly what I'm doing a little bit later if somebody's interested. Not that one, but I will look at that one.
Yeah, also, anyone can raise hand in Google Meet. So that's the new feature. So if anybody wants to just talk, and yeah, just raise your hand, or you can just talk, I guess.
I see a question from Lou. How many people? 2, although I'm the main developer. My wife is mostly a designer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's definitely taken longer because I am kind of a newbie. So I feel like I've rebuilt everything a few times and starting to get comfortable, but then I learn more and then I think it's terrible. So I'm kind of constantly doing that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I also develop my app mostly myself. Yeah, yeah, I've been through it. You do good.
Right.
Good job.
Thank you.
So what is your roadmap like for this particular application? How do you kind of envision this? Where are you taking this this application to to the next level?
Also a good question, and I should know this off by heart. We're kind of figuring out as we go, but in the very near term, we'll be releasing our subscription plan. So that's what we're working to by the end of May, just to get some money coming in and probably getting better feedback from the users who are actually paying. But we're pretty ambitious with it. We think there's, I guess, an interesting or unique place in the market for what we're building. The competition is kind of interesting. You have very old incumbents who are doing things a certain way. A lot of people like, I don't necessarily like. And then there's kind of a new breed, which are completely different. So the poster child is Reflectly, and you can just look at that and draw your own conclusions, but it looks very different from what we're building. So yeah, short answer long, long answer short. We just want to be like the journaling app for people who want to improve themselves. We think work journaling is a pretty interesting area that nobody's tackling, but with a guided focus, if that makes sense.
Sure. Are you kind of also thinking like helping each other, connecting with people, sort of having like a help group amongst the people who have, different use cases could be. I mean, when it comes to, I know it is journal based, but do you plan to connect people, or is it just locally to your? It's very personal to one,
Yeah.
It's very personal to it's just to a personal level, but it's not connected to. It's not more like a social media platform that you.
So definitely not more like that. I do think the nature of journaling is generally pretty personal, but I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities. Work journaling and having a work focus, that's probably going to be personal. But what about like couples journaling or family, or even if you want to maybe like group responding to a single prompt and seeing those if you want to see them. I think there are some things we could do. It's kind of way in the future, but definitely private or personal as a main focus, I think.
So
another use case.
hey Krishna, so sorry. So I think let's go into the next presentation by Boris. Jordi, we'll come back to your question later on. Once we just keep once we run all the presentations.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey, thank you so much. I think it's a great app, and we will come back again. I think people have a lot of questions because you built such a beautiful app.
Thank you.
So I have a lot more questions, but yeah, let's move on to the next presentation. And Boris, stage is all yours.
Hi, hello everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Boris. I am a software developer, architect. Was doing applications on different platforms in different languages for quite a few years, many years. At this moment, I'm working as a tech lead for the company, and our main product is in Flutter. It's an app called Rush Racing. If you're in the US, you can find it in the stores, but it's not available in Canada. This specific application, it's casino type of social casinos, virtual racing, and gaming, but all based on the outcomes of real-time horse racing results all around the globe. It's a big application, more than 30 views and lots of content and so on. Yes, and now let's talk about Null safety. I'll try to share my screen, and please interrupt me anytime. And let's see, share. Present now. Entire screen. Share. And let's go from very beginning. Okay, Null safety. Again, there is lots and lots of good information on the web about Null safety in Dart and the Flutter. But I took this as an opportunity to learn myself Dart specifics and Flutter specifics and just put everything in one place for my own use. And first, a little bit of the disclaimer. It's all on my personal take on things, and I definitely can be mistaken in many places. Interrupt me anytime, comment, and we'll continue. Be aware of spelling mistakes everywhere. And yeah, a plan is first we'll go a little bit through the syntax, then we will touch some of the what I found sticky points, and then I will share how I'm approaching transition to Null safety on my own little to-do app that I use usually for experimenting with state management and such. First of all, null-aware operations, and question mark dot is chaining nullable calls, and double question mark is what's usually called Elvis operator, or providing in defaults in the case of null outcome. And here is an example of we're trying to parse, and then we call absolute, and then if nothing can be done because its parse has failed, then we return 0 in this specific case. There is interesting operator that can be used to assign value only in case if the target variable is null. It's double question mark. Another thing that is very I'm only familiar in Dart is, or found in Dart is null-aware spread operator, and it can be used in context of the creating collections and using collections. And the bang operator, in case you know exactly what you are doing and you know exactly that they're not be null, you can use the exclamation mark and convert or unwrap the nullable to the actual underlying value. Subscripts understand nullables as well. It means we can chain nullable and access subscripts with using the again question mark operator for maps and for arrays. And here is an example. And cascading operator can be used with nullables as well. Here's one interesting note is that because cascading functions after the nullable are all returning not nullable but actual values, you don't need to continue propagate question mark, and only first one suffice, and then just cleaner syntax. One other interesting case is passing nullable functions around and being able to check if function is nullable, and you use this call to call the functions, and you can pass parameters if function requires parameters, and again check for null on the fly. Type promotion. First of all, Sid, can you voice if you can hear me, because I don't see anyone as I present, and I want to make sure that everything is okay.
Yeah, everything's okay. I can see the presentation. We can hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
Thank you. Type promotion is an idea that after you checked for the type, you don't need to check it in subsequent call if it's inside the same function. In this specific case, we accept parameter, function parameter val, which is nullable. We check if it's null, and then we can use it after that without checking it for the null again. It means it's unwrapped to the underlying value. Another interesting case is type promotions for the class members. And it doesn't work. Maybe forever, maybe not right now. There is a very interesting discussion on the type promotions for class members, and at the end I have the slide with all the links, including the link on the discussion. But at that moment, we are not able to unwrap and promote this class member as non-nullable. It means this code will not work. Kind of, I would say, workaround is assigning your member to the local variable. Then it does work, as with all local variables. It means code on the right panel will do work, and we can continue with unwrapped value.
Is it a bug?
No, it's not a bug. I think it's a complexity that is not easy to address. It is addressed in other languages, and again, judging that it's an open entry, or whatever the term is, and there is a discussion going on, I'm hopeful that it will be resolved.
I mean, here's a very great, it's an insane example, but this is why we like to say that we're sound. So you have to be very paranoid. And so in this case, I could have a very annoying setter or a very annoying getter, and the getter basically on access randomly changes the value. So the first access, when I say, oh, is null, I'm doing a get, I just decide, oh, like, I'll change it to null after that access. Like, there's no provable way if the variable's not in scope. And so you basically need some notion of a sealed class.
If it's final, how getter can send it, change it? I'm missing point here.
Oh, I could implement the type, and then the implementation is not final, because I can't look just at the current instance. Someone could implement it or extend the type, and then
for extension. Yes.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of crazy edge cases.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's,
so yeah, we
definitely
need some notion of sealed or something to do this, or some notion of really final, like enforced final.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, but for now we can live with it this way. But yeah, thank you. Yes, very typical scenarios that very kind of happens, very common for Flutter actually, where we have some state of the stateful widget where we do need to declare variables. We don't want to have them nullable because we know that init state will be called, and we know that we will initialize them later on. And here's an example of that where we my underscore task and underscore node. I know it will not be null. It could be an empty string, but not null. And there is a special keyword called late. It can be used in other contexts, but it's a very nice fit for this specific case where we know that it will be late initialization. It can be used with a regular class as well, and it provides laziness mechanism for variables as well. But yeah, for Flutter world, that would be very typical. Yeah, another interesting case that I came around that I was questioning how to do stuff is, again, quite common pattern in the Dart Flutter world if you are a fan of immutable data and immutable state, where you use copy with function to create a copy of your object when you're modifying something. But there is a problem of indicating that what you want to set is the actual null value. In this case, we have selected item ID, let's say, which can be reset or set back to null, or we would like it to be set to null when we unselected something. But this actually will not work. It means this code will not work as expected if we would try to pass selected item ID to copy with function as a null. Instead, it will be sticky. It means we can do it once to set it to value, but we will not be able to reset it. There are a couple of ways to deal with it. One is to use some kind of, for this specific case, for this selected item ID, to use wrapper, similar to optional or maybe little class. And then you can specify it as none or as some and just deal with it. And that's probably the way I would use it. There is another one I found used in a library called Freezed, I think, where there is just a constant special undefined value defined everywhere in the scope, and it passed around just to indicate that the user's intent is actually not to ignore the value, but actually set it to undefined when copy with it called, or some other call that uses uses optional parameters. Let's now go through the demo. I have little applications that some of you guys might be familiar with. As soon as I'll find it. It's in a to-do app. I might even run it once. And again, there is a link to repository, and it has two branches. One is before converting to null safety, another one after converting to null safety. Just let's see if it compiles. And why it's doing it. Let's go through few. Yeah, presentation makes everything slower. There are a few handy commands that I use to check if my project is ready for conversion to the null safety. And there is a beautiful tool helping with the migration. Yeah, everything is very slow because again, it's a very much typical to-do application. I mimic the to-do application in this project that uses different state management architecture for this to-do app. Again, I use my own state management that I talked about before.
I remember your app from the previous talk.
Exactly. Yeah, same app. Just it's a list of to-dos, and there is a to-do, and we can edit it, and a couple of lists, and so on. Anyway, now let's go through the process of trying to convert it through null safety. First thing, you might notice that instead of command Flutter, I use F. It's just an alias because I use Flutter FVM, Flutter version management, because I have multiple versions running it simultaneously on my machine, and F is an alias just to run it through FVM. But it's the same as just running Flutter command. In my specific case, there are a couple of libraries. They both in dev dependencies, but they could be in the dependencies as well that are not compatible. What I generally wanted to say is that you still can use your project as null safe way, or make your project null safe, even if some of your dependencies are not yet implemented null safety. And there are some, I'll show it later, there are a little bit of the considerations, but generally it works. Now, you can check if the dependencies are suitable for null safety using another command. And again, Flutter is very helpful, or Dart, of telling us if it can be done. And here we can see that I cannot convert this couple of libraries because the dependencies on different versions of the libraries underneath. And for that, I left it as it is. Now let's look at the tool. Dart migrate actually doesn't do immigration, but it goes through the analysis process, and then it pops up this nice tool that gives you some hints and indications what needs to be done, and trying even to help you to do it, which I found I would rather not. Here is an example of how this tool looks like when it runs, and it indicates all these places where something doesn't work, and we can go and see all the explanations and even steps to be taken, which again, I don't think that tool is completely ready yet. I find that it's a very good as an overview, but I wouldn't use it as actual mechanism for converting, because I don't think it infers intent very well. But I don't think it's necessarily needed. And the way that I actually do the conversion is I just go to my pub file, and I just upgrade SDK dependency to 12 or higher. And after it's done, I have all the places. Again, I can refer to the tool as a reference, but compiler actually helps me to go through all.
Does it give the same explanation as the?
No, compiler doesn't give me an explanation, and again, I don't agree with the explanation of the tool anyway, but it gives me all the places where it finds conflict, and we will go through a few of them. We don't need to go through all of them. Again, I have both versions, and we can compare and see the difference. But if I go to do, and I know, for example, that now directive called required is a keyword. That means all what I need to do here is just go and remove required. I don't want to make my variables optional as suggested by compiler in this specific, by the tool, sorry, this specific case, because I want it to be explicit, and it's again, I use immutable state. That's why all my state classes are generally all immutable final and use this copy with syntax and so on. And so on. And I like actually going manually. Again, I'm very much compiler reliant in my life, and that's why I really like static languages and statically compiled languages, and so on and so on. Something a little bit more complex here, and I found it actually, again, it's a simple application, but it works quite well. And here, for example, this is a very nice case, because to-do state is the in this case, list of to-dos is actually hash map, because it's by to-do ID in the state. And hash map API changed, and now lookup for ID returns optional. And here I have multiple ways of dealing with it. One, I may say, okay, I know that it's never the problem because I know what I put there. Again, I wouldn't suggest it doing it this way, but now everything is all right because I said so. Again, not a good idea. Or I can say, no. There might be a case, even I'm not thinking about it right now, where to-do might not be found by ID for some crazy reason. And now I need to address it explicitly, where before I even didn't think about it. For example, on press, now I need to check if my to-do, which now is an optional, Like if to do equals null, just do nothing, for example. Let's say just return. Nothing to do. But there is more interesting case. Here is actually
I have a
render.
question.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a good thing the analysis tool showed you that okay, to do can be null. So you can also kind of force to do with a bang, right?
Yeah, that's what I did right here. Yeah, I said that's yeah. You see, this is widget called connect state, which observes changes in the substate, and that's our original code. And I can just go. By the way, is it big enough? Because I can definitely make it bigger.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
I can just do it with a bang and say, I know it's never null because I put it there and so on and so on. And that's it. It's all done and all continue to work. Or I can put more thought. And by the way, you see there is a warning here. Hey, you're checking for null, something that never null, which is, again, very good thing.
Yeah, so yeah, I was kind of wondering that you should be careful when you're using these bangs. Because
that's what I said. I would recommend not using bangs and thinking deeper about what's going on here. But again, now I'm saying my connect state not guaranteed to have a to-do, and now I need to think about it. And easy part to think about it when it's just on button press, and I'm saying there is no context, nothing to press, just go away. But now there is a rendering. And here it's a little bit more interesting, and I can deal with it by even providing stub screen and saying something went wrong, and so on and so on. I don't want to go through all of the details. I just want to show how it in general the process looks like, and that's what I found quite workable and not difficult to do. And yeah, this is a change in an API where now this again, I'm using reactive extensions, and there is a change in behavior subject. Now it requires it might be nullable. And in this specific case,
just time check. We got 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. That's great. In this specific case, I do know that when I initialize this subject, I put value here, initial state. I guarantee it. It means in this specific case, I do use bang because, again, it's not network data or anything else. And I know I initialized it in the first place. It's always there. Now let's go back to slides, if I'll find my way.
Yeah, I think just use bangs carefully.
Absolutely. Few more interesting notes. As I mentioned, you still can use your own code in a null safe manner, even if you're dependent on the libraries that are not null safe. But you need to be aware of a few things. First of all, legacy code is treated, all return values by Dart, by compiler, are treated as just regular values. It means it's up to you to know what you are calling and what you are doing. And it means, sorry. I should stop using mouse. Let me do this. Apologize. Sorry. Anyway, you need to know what you are doing because it returns like it's going back to old ways. And you can say, yeah, I know it's always a string because I checked inside the code or whatever. Or you can say, no, it's actually optional now. And I will be careful and I will treat it the way that it potentially can be now. Now, at the end, why null safety is important? Again, my take on it is this. It's generally about explicitness and about making the code saying what it actually promised to do. And in this specific case, if to do will not be nullable, we would not know that it could be null. And if human reads this code, you can see, oh, for some reason this to do may be null, and then you see, okay, it's add or edit, and probably if it's an edit, it should be a value. If it add, it's not necessarily value. Again, there are better ways of doing it, but it's outside of the scope of this presentation. But it's better than implicitly having nulls anywhere in your code. And second, very important part of the same thing, it's about compiler being able to check that your usage matches your intent. And in this case, compiler will force us to check that a widget has a to-do and to do something about it if to-do is not there. And references, again, all slides will be available, and there is a bunch of links, including the links on the repository that used for this project and both branches before and after conversion to null safety. And now let me stop presenting. And now I have a question to the Dart language. I was surprised to find out that APIs for hash maps changed, and I was very happy to see it, but for iterable did not change. For lookups like find first where or find only where is still throws an exception when I'm trying to look up for something in, let's say, in a list, which right now is annoying because, again, I don't like exceptions personally, but now we have nullable. Why not to return null in this case as well? And I had to create my own extension method and come up with my own names to be able to consistently work with hash maps and lists and so on when I'm looking for a single element.
You should be familiar with package collection. This is not the Dart collection set. This is the stuff that's in the pub, but it's still provided by the team, the Dart team. Package collection has a if something or null. It has the things probably that you built. It's already in package collection.
Okay, thank you, Randall.
Package collection, yeah. If you mind, like, we went through a huge breaking change for Dart 2 to go to sound, and we still have. I forget I already talked about this somewhere else. I think it was on the Wednesday chat. And we didn't want to do another big breaking change. So in general, we wanted Dart 2.12 to be a non-breaking change. At least you have to opt into the breaking changes. And part of that was there's APIs we kind of did want to change and we couldn't. So for instance, indexer on a map or the square brackets on a map, I kind of wish that was return T and a T question mark. But lots of people use null there to say the element doesn't exist. And so similar with some of these indexer operators on collections. We couldn't change the types because we didn't want to break things. So, Dart 3, which we have no plans, nothing. I actually don't even think I have anything I can be obscure about because we really have nothing concrete there. We might consider some breaks to these APIs, but for now we kind of had to be really careful about just consistency. It drives me nuts too. I have exclamation points. I have bangs all over with the Matcher API and with the Map API, and they annoy me, but there's good reasons for them.
I honestly, again, it's just my personal take on it. I do like that map lookup returns optional, same as I would expect, let's say, first in a list would return optional because, yes, there is a chance nothing is there and stuff like this. Yeah, right. But I actually, again, if someone interested, again, I don't remember. I use library called KDart because they just implemented immutable APIs for collections, and because I do work in Kotlin as well, it's just good fit because it's same APIs.
The problem with returning a null if the element doesn't exist in a map is that you can't store nulls in a map significantly, and that that can be a little weird.
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, I'm used to using maybes or optionals, and for me, it's syntax and all these exclamation marks and question marks are less important than compiler catching me all the places where nulls can be returned. For that, I usually use wrappers, and as I think Scott Vlashin said, nothing cannot be fixed by just using yet another wrapper around the class.
Awesome. That was a great presentation, Boris. I think the time was just perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll also come back. We'll have just a Q&A session where we can ask all the three presenters, which is Jeffrey, Boris, and Kevin later on. But yeah, I think this is a nice segue from null safety to the product manager on Dartlang and Flutter. So we can switch to Q&A session with our MVP for today's event.
I'm one of 5 product managers. I'm not the product manager. I'm a product manager.
For Flutter Vancouver, you are the product manager.
Yes.
So,
although the funny thing is, I'm talking to you now from the Seattle Google office. So
yeah,
I had to go away.
I could see the US C, and I guess that's your meeting room symbol.
I think so. Yeah.
Are you coming back to us?
I am. Tomorrow, yes. And hopefully I can get out of quarantining for 14 days, because that's no fun coming back to Canada and having to quarantine. Although, because the numbers are actually pretty same. Anyway, so yeah, I'm sore from my Moderna vaccine. Thankfully, I've medicated it enough where I feel okay to talk to you folks. I don't have anything prepared. I have my laptop here. I'm happy to walk through things. I'm happy just to answer questions.
Yeah. So I did prepare like a few questions just to build up the momentum, but they're pretty high level questions. And then I know Kirk wanted to ask you about console applications later on, if I remember. I'm not sure. So I think everybody wants to ask you questions for sure, but I would like to ask you some high level questions, build up the momentum, and go from there.
Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, I think let's start with about yourself. How long have you been working for Google? Everybody wants to work for Google. What are some of the challenges working there? And how did you end up with being a product manager for Flutter and Dart team?
That's a great question. It's actually what I think my story is. I don't know if it's common or uncommon, really. I got excited about Dart. So my career trajectory, I graduated from college in 2002. I interned 3 times at Microsoft. I was like a Microsoft fanboy, crazy. Went to work at Microsoft in 2002, was there for 5 years. Kind of got a little bit, I had a bad manager, which is always the case, right? You don't leave a company, leave a manager. But I wanted to go out and do all the open source stuff. I mean, honestly, I remember going to conferences and some big shots in the .NET world were like upset because, and this is early 2000s, but I remember like being in line in the airport in Vegas, like we went to some big conference there, and like the big shots in .NET were like pissed off because one of the interns was like asking if he could still work on Mono, even though he works at Microsoft. And these guys are like directors and VPs, and they're like all annoyed with him because like, oh gosh, he wants to go do that open source stuff. And of course, we fast forward 15 years, and now all of .NET is moving towards open source. So I left Microsoft when it was all very, it was all still locked down. I wanted to go do the Ruby on Rails and JavaScript and all those things that were cool. And I got into that, but I really missed types. I was a .NET guy. I worked on .NET before it was called .NET. And when C# was called cool. And I wanted something that was kind of in the middle. And so I discovered Dart, and I was super excited. And so I started contributing just because I wanted, and playing with it and filing issues. And then they made me a GDE, and then I kind of kept cranking. And after a while, they're like, you should really come apply and come work on this stuff. And I was never really jockeying for that. And I think I run into this a lot. You run into people who are just excited because they want to make money or something. Getting excited about the technology and digging in, like that enthusiasm really matters. And so I got lucky in some respects, but also I was super excited about Dart and the direction it was going. So I've been at Microsoft now, Google, it all blurs together. I've been at Google now, I think it's 7.5 years. Again, it all blurs together. I started in December of 14 or 13. I can't quite do the math. I joined Dart just before it went V1. It was an unsound type system. We had, I'll call it delusions. Wait, this is being recorded. I should be careful. There were people on the team who were very excited to get Dart actually built and shipped as part of Chrome. Do people heard of that? There was a vision of getting Dart into Chrome.
Yeah, Chrome actually was running it natively at some point.
Yeah, like there was a version of Chrome called Dartium.
Yep.
Which like had Dart built into it. Yeah. There's a T missing there, Randall, but yes. Oh my gosh, we had a pinata made for the Dartium, and the day we stopped working on Dartium, we like destroyed the pinata because it was such a pain in the rear end. What was crazy was we pushed all this work. I don't know if folks know, like Chrome. Oh gosh, they had a ref count. They had a ref counting. Oh, the DOM in Chrome. I guess Blink now was ref counted, and V8 was GC'd, and so they switched Blink over to be GC'd as well and have a shared GC. And part of it was called OilPan, and part of the reason we did it was so that you could have multiple VMs in Chrome. And it turned out there was a bunch of great benefits for Chrome and all. So they did all this work in Chrome ostensibly to support Dart, and it never went in. And I was of the opinion towards, the last little bit of time there, where they were still pushing for it. I was like, it'll be a curse for us if we ever get in Chrome, because then we have to worry about backwards compatibility and all these other things. And right now we can change Dart a lot, and existing apps that we've compiled in JavaScript work great because they're out in the world in JavaScript. And so that was kind of a big deal. So, I went through the transition to a sound type system with Dart 2. I was around when before Flutter was called Sky, and it was an experimental thing. So it's been kind of a crazy set of years. And now I'm back looking at some server stuff with Dart, which is hilarious because that's stuff I did the first couple of years at Google, was worrying about Dart on the cloud. But now that Docker is around and containerization, I'm kind of spending time there. So that was again, forgive me, I'm on the day after my second Moderna shot. Not to rub it into Canadians. I know the shots are coming, but I'm a little fuzzy. But at least that's kind of a little bit of my trajectory at Google and on Dart.
Sorry for interrupting.
Go for it, Boris.
I actually, you might, in 2012 at Las Vegas, my app was demoed by Microsoft. I did a contract for them for Deep Zoom Composer. And it was during the mix in 2010. And I think at the same time, when the first time, it was a desktop for Deep Zoom technology at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And this is where they started to kind of push away from Silverlight. And I got frustrated, and I started looking to the Dartium and abilities to do it.
I worked on WPF at Microsoft, so the XAML stuff. I worked on all that. Yeah,
it wasn't a WPF. It was Deep Zoom. They wanted to bring it to consumer, and I did the project.
So and now I'm back, on another UI platform that tries to be cross-platform, which is super exciting.
That's a nice one. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, do you think was it difficult for you to come from like the .NET C# world to like Google technologies like Dart and Flutter?
Not at all. I thought I had done a bunch of .NET. Then I went and did a bunch of JavaScript and Ruby, and then I ended up working on and using a technology called the Closure Compiler, which is hilarious. Actually, I was working with some friends, also ex-Microsoft folks, and we were contracted to do a demo application for the IE9 launch. And I took Box2D in JavaScript, and I ported it to the Closure Compiler. And so we did this big IE9 launch, and we showed off this cool app showing, audio and everything in IE9, and people were very excited. And then I went, and I was actually invited by Mozilla. I flew down to California and gave a talk at Mozilla about how I use Chrome DevTools and the Clojure compiler to build this app. And I found out later that Microsoft was a little annoyed with me for they paid all this money for this demo app, and I was basically talking about how great all Google's technology was for building it. I think someone actually asked me at the time, how is IE? And I sat and thought way too long. It was not cool. And I was like, IE9 is way better than previous versions of IE. That was all I was willing to say. And actually, it was funny. At the time, I'd had these arguments. I worked right along guys at IE team, and they're like, "Yeah, everyone's saying IE should use, Blink and use Chrome's rendering engine. That's insane. That'll never happen." It's really funny. It's really funny how things have moved. And of course, I've now completely forgotten your question. I'm high on Advil and caffeine right now. What was it? I'm sorry. Did I answer your question? I even forgot what it was. I'm really, honestly, more together than I am right now. You have me a little bit high on post-vaccine.
Yeah, and by the way, my questions might feel kind of a little stupid because I know Dart a little bit. I'm more of a Flutter guy and less of a Dart guy. But yeah.
Actually, I remember your question now. So yeah, to answer your question, I thought Dart was this perfect thing in the middle between JavaScript and C#, which is what I wanted. I wanted a little bit more ceremony than JavaScript, but not so much ceremony as C#. I thought C# did a good job of having less ceremony than Java, but still, I remember, and again, they've changed some of the stuff. But to do a hello world in C# was public static void main. Args list, string. It's that is a semester of computer science right there. And so I think Dart's done a pretty good job of finding the balance. I'm actually, as someone on the product team, trying to be aware of adding complexity. As Boris went through, we added a lot of syntax with null safety in Dart for a language that's pretty lightweight. And I know there will always be advanced people that always want advanced features, and that's great. But we need to make sure that we find a good balance there so we don't terrify new users. And so things like metaprogramming are a great example. There's some active work on metaprogramming. I'm pushing really hard. I don't drive that work, but I coordinate with those folks, pushing really hard to make sure that we find a really good balance so that most users should not have to think about metaprogramming or should have to use it. And when you do, making sure it's very straightforward, it's easy to debug, it's easy to understand what's happening. And that balance is really hard to do because it's really easy to add stuff and it's hard to remove stuff.
I found that you have code generators from the get-go is a good escape route for the kind of deficiencies in the languages. It helps mitigate some of the shortcomings so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a big push. If you go back far enough in the history of the SourceGen package, that was my package I started with because I wanted auto JSON serializable, and that ended up turning into the build packages and JSON serializable and all those things. And so I'm hopeful that the metaprogramming work, what you want is, and I think Go talks about this a lot, which is you want multiple orthogonal features that compose nicely to add a lot of power. And so I'm hopeful, people want data classes and some other things. I hope that metaprogramming could be a way that we offer features like that so that you get the benefits of those types of features, but without the lock-in of saying, okay, it's locked into the language at this version and we can't change it and evolve it. We'll see how that goes. I know that's I'm reading docs, the last few weeks where we're continue to kind of push that stuff.
Is there a plans to expand on the type defs? Because I find it deficient in the.
It's coming out in It's coming out in 2.13. Type defs will support types, so I can do JSON map. I can define JSON map as type of map of object question mark. And we can also, what else can you do?
But they're just type aliases. They don't segregate the type space. So you can define type ID equals int, but it doesn't mean it can't be used everywhere and int can be used. It's just identification.
That's unfortunate, but still better than now.
Still better than now, yes. And you can define list of ID once you've done that. And so you can have common names for ID list and things like that.
Yeah.
This will definitely be a plus for documentation, at least.
I think I know that the work has been after null safety to do small features, small fast features. I actually think there's a list in the language repo that's basically like low-hanging fruit. And so we're avoiding doing really crazy new features right now because null safety took a lot of effort for everyone involved, for the community, for the people in the team. And now we're like, what are small incremental things we can do? So for instance, putting generics in metadata annotations is something else that they're working on, and the triple shift. So trying to find a good balance there, which is good for everybody, because these big cross-cutting features are just exhausting. They're powerful and they're useful, but they're cross-cutting. Yes.
And they're not very good for enterprise adoption because people get scared when there are breaking.
Right, you want some stability for a while. Like,
absolutely.
We don't want to be a Python 3. Go ahead, Sid, or anyone else.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'll ask actually is for those that have been quiet so far, I want to prioritize you folks that are just listening, or else Randall and Boris will just ask me questions all night, which is, you know, they're great guys, but I want to make sure everyone else has a chance to chat and ask questions.
So I do have a few questions, but I think it's better we open up and anyone can ask any questions. And if there are no questions, then I'll just ask the questions that I prepared. So it's all good.
Kirk looks excited. What's up, Kirk?
I've got a question that Sid hinted to, and someone in the chat also mentioned Fuchsia too. I'm curious how the Dart team manages its priorities when you have, I mean, Flutter it felt like Flutter just kind of dragged Dart screaming onto the stage all of a sudden. And now you also have Fuchsia, where it's supposed to have a very important, play a very important part in its architecture. So I'm just wondering how the Dart team itself manages to set clear priorities with possibly having multiple teams and your own products wanting different things from the language itself.
You asked, that's a good question. And this is, if anyone spent any time with me, sometimes I need to stand up to think. So, is it going to zoom out? How do we prioritize? Honestly, we try really hard to be, it's a combination of kind of, Gretzky's, of course, I reference hockey to much Canadians, and it's an American hockey player, but, I don't play a lot of hockey. Skate where the puck is going. And so we try to be smart about doing that. So kind of keeping in mind where the direction of the technology or the ecosystems are going, and then really listening to customer feedback. So null safety is a great example here. We did a bunch of work just kind of working through performance implications and realizing that a lot of the competition we had for people look at evaluate languages, they are looking at Swift and Rust and C++ and those things, and there's an expectation around performance. And fundamentally, and again, this gets into some of the null safety stuff, if we could guarantee that an integer flowing into a function was non-null, and there's actually great discussions on this, and you'll see more. There's more content around. I think we've talked about IOs coming. I think I can hint at stuff at least a little bit. We have more good content in IO around this. We can cut in some. I mean, there's micro benchmarks, but we can cut the assembly generated to 20%. So 80%, cut off 80% of the code we generate when dealing with numbers if we know they're not null. This is part of the work we did before. Dart 2 is we switched integer from being arbitrary precision to being 64-bit. But now we can generate basically the assembly code that you would generate if you're running in C or Rust or Go. And so we didn't want to leave that perf on the table. We knew we could get much better performance and improve. And also, we have lots of customers internally at Google who build large systems, and it's much easier to compose these big systems with things like null safety, because you can trust the interfaces between libraries more, and you're less likely to do things like null safety issues. So we try really hard to listen to customers and kind of keep an eye on where, skate where the puck is going. Another good example of that, and again, I think I talked about this in the Wednesday Q&A that Randall's occasionally part of, the Flutter community YouTube channel. They're working on much lighter weight asynchrony and concurrency as well, for the same reason. Like, we have the fundamentals in place. We want to keep this notion of isolation, which is really powerful. We don't, at least my understanding now, and again, I don't drive a lot of this effort, but the fact that I don't have to use mutex and lock and those kind of things and deal with race conditions in Dart is generally good, and we want to keep that. But what can we do to still allow people to leverage concurrency? And so looking at those kinds of things. I can say, frankly, we do coordinate with people that work on the fuchsia stuff a bit. And actually, you can see commits that go in through our changelog, but it doesn't really cross my radar at all. Like, they really are consumers of Flutter. And we do some work because it is a separate platform you have to think about, other than iOS and Android and other things. But day to day, as far as my day-to-day work, I don't spend much time thinking about it.
Sounds like you have a good process in place then, if that's the case.
Well, yeah, we try to. We try to spend time on, who are we unblocking from a user perspective, and what things are we trying to enable. Again, if you look at the language features that we're talking about, a lot of people are asking number separators. Like, people really want to be able to do like 1_000_0, which I think exists in a few other languages and is super nice syntactically. But one of the driving forces for the language features after null safety was, what are things that you just cannot do now? And so the syntax for the numbers is great, and I'm sure we'll do it eventually, but we really wanted to focus on what can we unblock that you can't do now.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Riaz has a question. Hey, Riaz, go for it.
Hey, thank you. So I have a question. Maybe it's off topic, but it's related to Dart, Google, and Android. So my question is, does Google have any plans to introduce Dart as one of the programming languages for Android?
Good question. I mean, it is now in the way it is. We talk to those folks, and when Android comes out with new features, we want to make sure that we offer the components integration with those features. It's an interesting relationship, I'll say, because obviously there's, we are in different orgs, and they have a different vision of things, which is great. And we've, I think the Jetpack stuff, if I remember correctly, took some inspiration from Flutter and other things. I don't coordinate with those folks very much. Truth be told, I think others on our team do talk to them more. And really, I think it's okay. What the Android folks, at least on the UI component side, what they want is they want to offer the best kind of, like, if you want to turn your Android development up to 11, use these APIs, and integrate with all the brand new features and all those things. And that's great. And I think they're doing a great set of stuff. And what we're trying to do is offer the best cross-platform experience. And so if we were just focused on Android, we probably could offer more features and ship features more quickly, but that's not our goal. We want to let people make pixels anywhere there's a screen. And so it's a slightly different focus. And so we're friendly with those folks, and we wish them well, and they light up cool new features that we can use, which is great. But it's funny, when I joined Microsoft, I did the same thing. Like, it seems kind of funny that these 3 or 4 teams aren't better coordinated. And it's like, it's kind of the reality of big corporations. It's just how things are. Like, the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing, kind of thing. There's smart, awesome people working on cool features in Android, and I love my Pixel, and I can't wait to see what the next one is coming out. And I think from the overall Flutter, from the overall Android ecosystem perspective, we want is a world where if I install some app, whether it's written in Jetpack or C++ or Unity or Flutter, like, people just should say, oh, this is a great experience for the thing I'm trying to do on it. That's the most important thing.
I mean, if you know Dart, why even use Android? Like, just use Flutter.
I'm not surprised that people in this group would say that. And obviously there's Flutter folks there's Android folks who have different opinions, and that's totally fine. Like,
yeah, that's actually good. I wish we could use Dart for Swift too, like in that ecosystem, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
It's not, people assume, oh, there must be some clear priority and clear plan from some vice president. Like, I probably should do a better job of pretending there is, but like, it's kind of the reality of big companies.
Randall has a question. Yeah, go for it, Randall.
Oh, Randall. Wait, okay. Randall, I've talked to Randall a bunch. Anyone else who's not talked yet have questions?
Because he hates this question for a setup. So anyway, yeah.
I see Chris's question at the bottom.
Yeah. I can't see the chat now. My chat got erased.
Yeah, Chris.
My question was, what keeps Flutter from ending up in the graveyard with Google+, Google Music, Wave? Like, it's a fantastic tool. I love using it. There is definitely some small fears that it just disappears.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're not small.
Oh, you guys asked a good question. I mean, what's to stop it? That's a great question. So, I love Google Reader too. I was so sad when it was gone. The big thing that I would to offer reassurance is I'm not an executive at Google, so I can't make promises, right? So one, it is open source. It's not a service. And two, it's critical for Google's business in many ways. There are a lot of teams at Google betting heavily on using Dart and Flutter every day. I don't think I'm allowed to give numbers, but there are a lot of developers using Flutter and Dart every day at Google, and the number increases. And Googlers don't like rewriting code either, especially if to switch to a framework they like. And actually, we had a lot of people migrate to Dart because Dart and Flutter because it allowed them to write less code and deploy more places. And so there's a lot of teams at Google betting on Flutter and Dart to build apps because they can build an app once and deploy it many places. We're on Google Assistant now, and obviously Android, iOS, on things like the Stadia app and the Google Play app and a bunch of others. Not to mention things like Google Ads is all written it's a JavaScript framework, but that's all written in Dart. So there's a lot of people that are using it every day at Google. And it's not a service, it's all open source. So, in theory, anyone could run with it if we stop to do it. But I've been in places at companies where I promised left and right and center that a thing would live forever or a long time. Again, I'm not an executive, but the problem is even if I was an executive, who knows if people get fired and changed hands? Like there are no promises here. But I think it works well, and there's a lot of people betting hard on it.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's Krishna here. Do you have any sort of AI also incorporated with the products that you release with Flutter? Anything to do with AI?
APIs related to AI. I know there are people who have wrapped AI, like I think the Firebase ML, I think those packages are out that are the Firebase ML libraries. And I also know that there are Google APIs that I help maintain that wrap some of the ML libraries. So I would just go search for Google ML or ML in the package site. We tried to keep pretty clean layers between things. So there's no one on our team that's specifically thinking about ML, but if an API exists and it speaks, protobuf or it speaks JSON, HTTP, we can integrate those things. And now obviously with the FFI stuff, the foreign function interface stuff, it's pretty easy to talk to native APIs as well. I want to play with more API. I want to play with more ML stuff and not use Python. So I want to play in that space too.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm assuming maybe this has been answered somewhere before, but how did Dart end up with some types that are capitalized and some not?
Oh.
I'm sure you've answered this a million times. I've just honestly never Googled it. And
I haven't. Actually, I haven't answered it. I think.
Oh, Randall's saying he can answer. Oh no, now he's.
No, my recollection of this is there were people on the team. Actually, a bunch of people who started Dart were on the V8 team, and before V8 they worked on Hotspot. They worked on Java, and so I think there was some legacy there around just trying to look like Java in some respects. I think with some of the. And the hilarious things, like people are like in Dart 2 or whatever, like, when are you going to rename double? I'm like, why would we ever want to break all of those people, right? Because it's bool num double int, right? String is capitalized, which is weird. And there's a null instance and a null class. You guys know that there's a null class, capital N null. But yeah, bool int double num. It's just weird. And
those were intended. The lowercase ones were intended to be the primitive ones, the ones that didn't have any content. Where a string actually is a string of characters.
Oh.
Right, but even like there was a discussion around, are these the ones that are effectively sealed? Like you cannot extend or implement num int double. Actually, no, I think you can implement num. I'm not sure. No, you can't.
No.
But you can't implement or extend string either.
You can extend num and extend string and extend every base class.
I don't think you can extend string.
I've extended the null class. I added a null.that as a variable.
Maybe not. I mean,
no, I did it.
So, I think okay, but like, so it's weird. It's the history of, you know, how these things get designed, and then a decision gets locked in, and you're like, you know, my favorite example of this is it's still called NS string in Objective-C, and that's from Next Step. Like that's the company that Apple bought that Steve Jobs had, and it's still called NS string. And they're like, why would we rename it? Like, and so it lives on forever, like as these funny little vestiges.
Cool, thanks.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
I think, does anybody have any other questions?
I see, wait, Bodu and Paul and Adam I haven't heard from, Colin.
Brian? Yeah, there's Adam.
I could talk. I don't know. I can ask a question. What's going on with the add to app integrations, and like how are those progressing along?
I would love to tell you, but I don't know anything about that stuff. Zoe is the master here. So that's we have a very we have a very close view of your head, I think.
Yeah, here I'll turn off my camera.
You're fine.
It's not very loud right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know anything about add to app. Sorry. I'm much more on the Dart side than the Flutter side.
Oh, okay, yeah, because we use add to app a lot at Realtor. So
I know they're trying really hard to make it better.
We're always like kind of like fighting weird integration issues and stuff like that.
Adam, you work for Realtor?
Yeah, I work for Realtor.
Yeah, I might like you know, just send you some messages later on. Maybe, you know, for another session you can come give a talk about, you know, how Realtor uses Flutter. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I think last time we had a Flutter meetup, I did actually talk a bit, but I'm always happy to like do another about our integrations and technology and stuff.
Awesome.
He's in here too. He was like my manager through most of our Flutter stuff. So he knows a lot about it too, although he's moved on.
Yeah.
Lou, do you have one?
Might still be here. I don't know. I saw him in here when I joined. Yeah. Hey, Remy.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
Oh, hey, Remy. You have Colin has a question. Go for it, Colin.
Yes, I haven't had a chance to really get started with a lot of development. I went through some videos on the tutorial. But what I would be interested in is, where is Flutter and Dart going in terms of smart displays?
Wait, say one more time.
Where do you see Dart and Flutter going in terms of supporting smart displays? Because I've been working on, for example, Dialogflow, and I'm thinking, well, you know, how much do I need to learn about Dialogflow, and can Flutter move into this area?
I mean, we've talked about, you know, BMW. We're talking to BMW uses this for app. Toyota, we just talked about in Flutter 2 launch, using it for their smart screen. There are experiences that are shipping right now on Google Home that are Flutter based. Although I think at the moment it is only for Google internal apps, so I don't know when the SDK will be available. I had some very brief conversations with folks around. We don't have like specific folks on our team that are focused on embedded, but even having like a public working group or a SIG, like a special interest group on embedded, I think would be very useful, because people have gotten Flutter working on Raspberry Pi and other things, and it's an area that people are, you know, smart displays are a very cool space. You know, that's not an area, other than I know that it works and people have got it bootstrapped in a bunch of fun, interesting places. It's not an area I have a lot of experience in, but we do. we do hope to be in a place where, anywhere you can draw pixels, you can, that, sufficiently powerful, you can run Flutter. And we want that to be the case.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Remy, did you just want to talk? Just introduce yourself, or I remember you want to.
No, I don't have any question at this point.
Okay, so so my question is related to the web renderers. Like Dart has, the canvas and the HTML web render, right? So I think HTML web render is very fast. I mean, at least for me, it's much faster than the canvas, and because of the 2 MB.
Oh, really? On mobile or on desktop?
On web.
I know, but mobile web or desktop web?
I would say desktop web.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, the performance is like for the Flutter Vancouver website, which is built using Flutter. I use the HTML render, and the performance shows up as 83% using Lighthouse. But when I switch to Canvas, it's like, oh, we don't know. It's so bad we can't show your number.
Oh. Yeah. Well, Lighthouse you got to be careful about because I wonder. Well, one, Lighthouse tries to do a fresh reload, which means you have to download the Canvas Kit API, which is pretty big. Like it's a meg and change. And then the way it renders, I wonder if it might be completely opaque to Lighthouse, honestly, because it doesn't add anything, it's very light in the DOM. It's all on Canvas. So I had to talk to Miriam and Farhad, the folks that work on Flutter Web. I drove a lot of the Flutter Web efforts about 18 months ago, and then I went and had a baby, and I've kind of got unplugged from it. I know in general, we think for most platforms, the Canvas Kit renderer is far better because you just don't deal with doing so much in the DOM. But you do pay this initial tax of downloading the you pay the initial tax of downloading the Canvas Kit sandbox first. And also my understanding is it also uses much more GPU, which depending on the power of your device, especially a mobile device or something, it might have more issues.
So if I use HTML render and the Lighthouse showed 83% as for the performance, the number for performance, is that correct? Is that accurate or?
I have to look at the numbers myself. My only thought is I would do an apples to apples just yourself, because I'm wondering if two things. One is you lose out because you're waiting for the Canvas Kit stuff to download, which is big. And two is I wonder if Lighthouse is confused because of the way the content's rendered, if it doesn't understand like when render is done because of the Canvas Kit stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
Yeah,
sorry, I just wanted to mention that there are a couple of limitations with Canvas renderer I came across recently. Is support for emojis and image. You need course set up properly if you're using CDN or something, because it doesn't want to load images if you don't have proper course settings.
I ran into that
for Canvas, but it does it properly with HTML render.
I actually did a bunch of. I removed a lot of assets that I was using. I was using local assets that was like 2 MB. I removed them, and I also removed the. I switched to HTML render. That's when I also got feedback from the community that the page was loading much faster. So, well, yeah, that was something interesting. Yeah, and I think the website is pretty good. And of course, the follow-up question is, I did look up using web for like document-heavy websites, and the documentation suggests don't use it. Because SEO could be a problem.
Yeah, we are, and this is something we discuss a lot. We can render text and everything else, but the web is so hyper optimized for document experiences that we really focus on app experiences. And so, in general, a web page, a typical web page is not a good fit it's not the best fit for Flutter Web. QuickBooks or a journaling app or those type of things we think are better experiences. Where SEO is less important. And you can do hybrid here. And again, I brought this case up many times. Like if you go to gmail.com without logging in, like there's a landing page and it's normal. But then once you log in, you have a different experience. And we're not worried about SEO on your inbox page because the search engine doesn't hit that, right? So the app experience, we don't care about SEO.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is, when you create apps, right? Let's just take the app that Jeffrey created. I'm pretty sure he wants to create a companion website where people can blog and post content about their experience about, writing their own journal. So I think using Flutter, you can quickly create a cross-platform app, because you can use a media query and then kind of just create the app for web faster. But I wish that if the SEO was also good, you would have a much faster way to go. Just finish the blog you wanted to create, or not worry about using 2 or 3 technologies and then
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's in my mind, it's similar to like Unity is another good example, right? Like, in theory, you could use Unity to make a reading experience or an app experience, but it's hyper optimized for a 3D game experience. And so, we want that experience to be better, and we think we can get there. But right now, we're trying to focus on the app experience.
It's funny, like everybody's saying they're looking at your room name, which is Vashan, I think, and then everybody's saying, "Hey, thanks, Jeff, Boris Vashan," and then says, they're not saying your name, Kevin, which is funny.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, they're just looking at the name of the meeting that you're in.
He can be anonymous today. That's cool. I did want to add to that just discussion there that part of what we're seeing with web Flutter is it's kind of like back to the old days where you had to download a Flash plugin in order to run some small amount of Flash code. But if you didn't have the Flash plugin already, you had to download that as an extra cost before that particular page would come up. And it's the same thing here. We have to download the whole infrastructure before we can start showing anything. And if that's okay for your app, cool. But if that's an expense that you don't want to pay, pick something else.
Yeah, I think that was a good point that Kevin mentioned when he said, okay, for your landing page, use, maybe you can use Angular or React, and then maybe you can use the subdomain like app.yourproductname.com and then switch to the app. Yeah, maybe the initial loading could take a little bit longer, but I guess once it loads, it's pretty fast. So, yeah. And
I wonder if some of that that expectation from the community, and really I'm just talking about myself, was this thing where you first hear about Flutter and it's like, oh, it's cross-platform. And then you hear, oh, they're working on web. As a community member, your brain immediately goes, oh my God, I have one code base for all the things I need to do. And I think, and I imagine maybe, even Google's Dart and Flutter teams, correct me if I'm wrong, even at that time, I'm sure you all didn't know exactly what you could or couldn't do with it yet either, because it wasn't fully built out. So I wonder, if, like in my case, I created an expectation of something I wanted so bad. So then once it developed and got to the point that it's at now, it was like, oh, okay, it turned out to not be the thing I was dreaming of in my head. So it was like an expectations thing.
Look at Flutter.dev and Dart.dev right now. These are not Flutter apps.
Sorry, say again?
Flutter.dev and Dart.dev are websites. They are not apps, and they don't use Flutter.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Do they use Dart? Angular Dart by any chance?
Actually, no. We don't use that either. Because Angular Dart has the same issue around SEO. It's better now than it used to be. What's that?
Even with Universal, Angular Universal is supposed to.
Oh, but that's on the JS side. So yeah, I don't.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't actually know if we have any. I don't think we use any big web frameworks at all. You know, it's a crazy chimera, the website stuff. But yeah, we don't. We do have some things that we compile from Dart to use on the sites, and obviously DartPad we've embedded everywhere. Then that's, you know, compiled using Dart to JavaScript. But the sites right now are just HTML.
Yeah, I remember seeing a conversation that, hey, we're stopping, we're reducing the amount of resources we're putting on Angular Dart, and it kind of blew up. And then I think Tim Snead, and he had to say, okay, guys, we're still working on it. And then, you know, he had to pacify all the people who were really angry. So that was interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm still working, trying to get the null safe version of Angular out. We are using Angular null safe internally, but there's some interesting issues with the build tools that we need to fix externally so that it works. But yeah, like we have a lot of people internally using Angular Dart still. We just realized that to support a community, it's so much work to support a community, and we just want to put all of our all the wood behind fewer arrows is what they talk about, and so we want to put all of our wood behind the Flutter arrow.
Yeah, the next actually I want to go to another topic, and Kirk and I used to talk about this quite a lot, is the support for iOS widgets in Flutter. And
I'm the wrong person to ask.
And so I'm going to do a talk on March 5th, which even you're going to attend for the Q&A along with Boris. And I was actually writing a sample app, my first app using React Native. And I could see the difference when you create an app using React Native, that you get the native experience. I did the same app using Cupertino app. It's native enough. I think it gets the job done. But one thing I did notice is when you use React Native, it's really hard to scale to like multiple platforms compared to Flutter. Flutter, you just write for the canvas and then it takes care of the portability. But with React Native, it's just iOS and Android, and you have to do some other mumbo jumbo to, you know, deploy to like web and other platforms. So interesting stuff. But the point is, I hope Flutter shows love towards Cupertino widgets and gets in parity with, you know, iOS 14, you know, the model sheet, or even the search. If the search has similar experience to the iOS native search, it would be really nice. But yeah.
Perfect. I need to apologize. I actually need to be clear out of the building at 8 o'clock so they can come through and like fumigate the place. I don't know what they do with COVID. So it's, again, weird for me to travel 2 hours south to call back to Vancouver. But it was my pleasure to talk to you guys. I'm Kev Moo on all the social media, so, you know, come hunt me on there. And I'm sure I'll see you in the future. And look, you know, keep paying attention to discussions around I/O. We'll have a bunch of fun content there.
Hopefully you'll release Fuchsia, and then, you know, it'll be awesome.
No, Fuchsia. Fuchsia, stop talking about, like, it's interesting, but yeah.
We'll stop talking about it when you stop talking about it.
I don't bring it up. When did I bring up Fuchsia?
Not you, I mean Google in general. When you release Fuchsia as an open source project and put the repo out there, that's Google talking about it.
Yeah, I don't work, yeah. Google's like 1,000 little companies. It's, you know, I was as surprised as you. I was like, really? The open source that? Okay, cool. I know. So have a great night, folks, and wish me luck at the border tomorrow.
Good luck.
Good luck.
All right, ciao.
Thanks.
Bye.
That was pretty interesting, and we can now ask questions to Jeffrey and Boris,
and me,
and Randall.
Yeah. Randall, can I mention, like about 3 years ago when I was speaking for technology for my company and was looking around, your lectures, that was big influence on Flutter, and I found, was searching on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, well, you should thank Wim Leeler, who is the Portland DevRel guy for Flutter, because he got me into Flutter, and it's just been, he also was my sponsor to become a GDE and all that sort of stuff. So you should thank him. I just like it because it's a new technology that seems to fit and scratch a lot of my itches. And I will continue to talk about it that way. One of the things I've said frequently on these kinds of forums is that, back when Perl 1 came out, I started to be excited about it. By the time Perl 3 came out, I was like, this solves lots of problems and people need to hear about this. I have not been as excited about a technology since then until now. Flutter for me is solving a lot of problems for a lot of people, and I'm very happy to be one of the blessed many who are able to get on forums a lot, talk about this thing, because I think this has legs is probably the simplest way to say that. Any Flutter questions at all? I kind of know a few things.
So do you know anything about Flutter? What's coming in Flutter in the future? What's in the roadmap?
I'm under an NDA. So anything I know that you haven't seen already, I can't tell you. But let me just say I continue to be excited. I can get away with that phrase. And that's about it.
Randall, can I ask you a question about
sure.
Dart and Flutter are open source projects that are very heavily driven by Google. Is there any plans, or are there people I don't know that are in like a major driving position that are not Google employees? Is there any active engagement of Google into the open source community of these projects to have non-Google people in more serious steering capacities?
I don't know precise numbers, but I've been told as of recently, especially with the Flutter 2.0 rollout, that more than 40% of the commits that went into Flutter 2 were from non-Googlers. That tells me that the community has adopted this. This is not a Google thing anymore. The Google team, yes, decides priorities, but they base it on the community based on issues. Those issue lists for Dart and Flutter are crucial. If you want something to happen, make sure it gets thumbed up or whatever they call it in issues to say, this is important to me. And they pay attention to that. I file an issue, within a day, somebody at Google has reviewed it and tagged it and given it some sort of relative precedence, priority, whatever. And just as a specific example of that, a week before Flutter 2.0 was released for the 3.3 event, I found a typo that meant nothing. The name of a function and the value it was passing, no, the parameter of a function and where it was passing it to had constraints rather than constraints. Completely pointless. Didn't make any difference at all, but I filed the issue. The next day, it was not only tagged good first commit, but it was also taken on by somebody who turned in and went through all the paperwork that it takes to be a Flutter contributor. And the next day after that, it was accepted and signed off by the Flutter team. And it ended up in Flutter 2.0 only a week before Flutter 2.0 came out. So issues work. They are on top of these. If you file a good issue because something's not working for you, give them a good repeat by set of instructions. If it's a behavioral thing, if it's an idea, just submit it and track it, and you'll see that these guys really care. They're doing a really good job of managing and being with the community and being part of the community.
Do you know if there's any community non-Google members that have like merge access, like committer
Yes.
access or
There are.
project management level or anything? There
Yes,
are committers,
there are.
non-Googlers? Oh,
Yes.
that's good to hear. I
Yes.
didn't know that.
I can't reveal specifics, but yes.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other actual technical Flutter questions that really stump me? What's the best state management system?
We
Yeah,
already know it's Forest's, so that's okay.
Yeah, we recently had a not heated but pretty interesting state management discussion within our Slack channel. So that was
cool.
Yeah. Let me see. I do have questions.
Can I ask a question of Jeffrey about Jeffrey's app?
Yeah. You can ask question to anyone. Yeah.
Quickly, just Jeffrey, you mentioned importing a bunch of things into the app. Is importing actually a feature you didn't show, or was that just something you threw into Firebase manually? Or
I just wrote a couple scripts and did a manual import myself. Yeah, people are definitely interested in export, which we will be building quite soon for obvious reasons. But yeah, import will be coming probably from the big ones. Evernote Day 1. I don't know who else.
Comes up that issue.
That's good to know.
Okay.
What are you using? Do you use something, Kirk?
I actually use a Remarkable. I use a Remarkable tablet. I don't use an app very much. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Randall, any thoughts on iOS Jank?
Well, this is a problem that has been known for quite a while, has been a thorn in the side, partially because part of it was hard to create reproducible cases. And so the Flutter team started soliciting, if you have something specific that we can do, and don't just say, hey, sometimes when it starts up, it's broken, then we're listening. And from that, there was also the recognition that most of the new Jank is because of the OpenGL to Metal transition on iOS. And they have a recent release in the pipeline. I don't know if it's actually in stable yet or not, where you can essentially warm up an animation in your dev side and ship those warmed up animations with your IPA for iOS and take advantage of that, because it now has the Metal precompiler and things like that. So they're trying as hard as they can to make this work. And it's disappointing to me how much negative press this gets, because it's broken, and it's broken for everybody that doesn't do this sort of thing that we're doing now.
Right?
Sorry,
Because,
what?
But rightly so, it gets negative reaction. That's because one big reason, the first big reason is people don't know about it, right? They're like, oh, Flutter, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it for my next big app. And once they're done, and then once they're pretty close to release, and they're like, oops, there is something called iOS Jank, and yeah, we're sorry, we can't do anything about it, right? So, and I can see why people can get the reaction. But being a software developer myself, I also understand that, things like this will happen. And,
they're also not seeing this everywhere. They're only seeing this in some interesting combinations of things. And so it's, yes, you may be the unlucky one that has the guy with COVID living next door to you or something, but you may be the unlucky one, but this is not something that affects everybody. It's not something you can particularly do anything about because the problem is very deep in the culture, very deep in the core of the issue.
Yeah. For example, Jeffrey's app, I could see the iOS jank when I first installed the app, and I could see it. I could see it on Cal's app, and when I was about to release my app, and I could see it. And one of the biggest worries would be the acquisition for consumer apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if it's enterprise app, you can get away with it. Nobody cares. But if it's like a consumer app, you're trying to get people on board. And these days, people are just not going to even, they're just going to delete it, some users, right? They're like, oh, what is this app? It's not smooth. I'm just going to remove it from, because they have better options, which are created using some other cross-platform frameworks. And it's really good to see that there's a solution now.
Yeah, well, it's like, I guess my concern was that out in the press, the idea was, this has been an issue for a year and they haven't done anything about it yet. Yeah, that's because they've been working hard trying to figure out how to solve it. It's not a trivial thing. It's not like this should have been 3 instead of 4 somewhere. And I think that's what makes me the most sad, is like, you can't attribute it. It's a pure architectural problem. And everybody knows architectural problems are the most difficult to retrofit and adjust to and make it actually work. And so, yeah, kudos to the guys in Mountain View trying to figure this thing out, because it is crazy and it does need to be fixed. And every developer for an iOS app has had to figure out their version of solving this. This is not sort of indigent to Flutter. It's just that Flutter makes it far easier to code up handwritten animations.
Yeah.
No, I actually have a Flutter question that related to assets management, and we came across a situation where, because now we support desktop and such, you want different set of assets for your desktop and mobile, and you do not want to pack, let's say, your desktop assets with your app for mobile development. And we couldn't find how to do it except doing some scripts combining package files and stuff like this. I was surprised that actually there is nothing, or I couldn't find it. Mm-hmm.
I'll give you the easiest way. I developed an app last year, actually as an answer to an interview question, that had both a command line interface and a web interface. And what I did is I put 95% of my code into a common pubspec.yaml all the way down. And then I made both of the other pubspec.yamls point at my common one. And with that, that means that the pubspec.yamls on either side can then go, here are my assets. Here are my design things. Here's my main.
Is there an example
very
of how
specific.
to do it?
Sorry?
Is there an example of it? Because we couldn't find.
Yeah, there's an example I haven't published yet. I'm trying to do a screencast on this soon, but no, it's.
Could you please notify us on our Slack channel? I think you're members there.
Of course.
It would be great, because again, we came across this with white labels and with different target platforms.
No, there's just much easier way to do this. And this is also how you can get flavors, and this is also how you can get everything you wanted without doing it hard. There's my YouTube channel, so you subscribe to that.
Oh, great.
It'll be there soon.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. But no, this is so simple, because the pubspec.yaml allows for name of package, path : .. /common. And that says, don't go out to pub.dev. It's right near here. It's just over there. And so then you define everything you want in common, and you can have your flavors on the outside of that.
That's nice, because we did it manually doing our own scripts.
Yeah, you put it all in the same Git repo, so it's all Gitted together. But it's up one level from where you normally do your
That's
Git
nice.
archive. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I will publish that soon. I've got so many things I want to publish. I'm not doing one right now because I'm here talking to y'all. But if I wasn't doing that, I'd be doing another publish today. Yes.
Remy, do you want to just introduce yourself and talk about yourself a little?
Yeah, sure. So Remy, well, I used to work for Realtor.com, so was working there and really leading the mobile team there. So we started using Flutter 2 years ago as a add-to app. In a way of bringing some new screen and new feature inside our existing mobile app.
So can you just talk about add to app feature if you can?
Yeah, sure. Well, and we publish a blog post on that if anyone is interested a bit more, but let me send you that. I can share a little bit too with that. So yeah, let me send the link here. But yeah, what we started doing is really with add to app is to sharing one code on Flutter that we were including inside an Android and an iOS app. I've shared the link there if you guys want to have a look. I don't know if you have any specific question on add to app. Anything you want to know for that?
No, just some info. Just wanted you to yourself introduce to the community.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it for me. Yeah, no. If you have any specific question, let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I did look up some, like during the showcase, you see Realtor as the first app, right? Yep. And then I always used to like think about it. Oh yeah, I mean, that looks pretty cool. And of course, my questions would be along the same that we all talked about, like the iOS Jank or, and things like that. But I don't know if you witnessed any iOS Jank when you use add to app though.
Well, it was a bit different and a different set of problem. Some of the problem are really on, well, all your navigation, especially when you navigate from your native going into Flutter, going back to native and that kind of things. It's really making sure that you have your Flutter engine pre-warm when you're gonna open your Flutter screen, so you don't want to have like a big black screen as you see if you don't pre-warm your engine. So that's the kind of issues that you're seeing. And it's also, when you do that, it's also, if you go from native to a Flutter screen, go back to native, but then open something else in Flutter, you want to make sure you clean up where you were to avoid having your screen flashing. So it's really, when you look at add to app, it's kind of, it's there for simple use case. When you start doing more and more, it becomes a bit more complex, and you have to find some workaround there and there to make it decent and make a good user experience. So that's the kind of things we faced at some point. But there is a way to deal with it. It's just it takes a bit more time and research. So
awesome. So yeah, I think we're pretty much done. We are at the post event session, probably online social. Yeah, if anybody has any more questions, go for it. Else I'll be on. We can keep chatting, ask more questions, or just talk about anything in general, or what you're working on, or what's interesting. Else we can, yeah. So I'll leave it down for another 15 minutes. I'll be on.
I just want to say I'm excited because I'm pretty close to having my first full-time Flutter contract is coming up real soon. And I'm going to jinx it, of course. Where's Wood? Where's Wood? There we go. Okay. But as much Flutter work as I've done over the last 3 years, it's all been to help y'all, but not really like something in earnest. So I'm happy to be taking on something in earnest. And hopefully I've learned enough from y'all, from answering questions for y'all, that I'm going to be pretty much spot on. My friend Simon Lightfoot, who runs the, which you guys all got to go watch, the Wednesday morning Hump Day Q&A. I'll be on there tomorrow, as I have been for the last 8 or 9 weeks. We're going to be talking about whatever comes up, because we don't have an actual guest, so this will be fun. State management, I think it's going to be. Wow, that's an exciting concept. But anyway, so Simon told me, he said, look, you're answering all these questions,